Welcome to the next video in our series, which covers applying for jobs online. In this video, we will cover why companies are going to online applicant systems, how they benefit you, challenges with online job applications, how to prepare for an online application, what things to keep in mind while filling out an online application, and lastly, we'll give you time to go out into our simulated online application website to practice filling out one using what you've learned so far. If you go out to almost any company's human resources webpage, you'll see a link that asks you to create a username and password and then to create an online job profile. What you're actually doing is entering information into an applicant tracking system, or an ATS. There are many benefits to companies for using these online applicant tracking systems, such as it limits paperwork for companies. No longer are the days where you submit a paper application, resume, and cover letter. It's all online now. It creates a record for each applicant. This allows them to track data for reporting purposes. It allows them to quickly identify unqualified candidates and screens applicant materials for keywords. These two go hand in hand. When the recruiters write job descriptions, they outline key qualifications and also use specific language on the job description. It is your job to, 1, make sure you're qualified for the job description and to convey that in your profile, resume, and cover letter, and 2, to be sure you're using some of the words they are using in their job posting or description in your own application materials. Next, it helps HR streamline the application process. All of the information you enter is stored on a secure database for them to archive and refer back to. Sometimes the software can eliminate candidates before the recruiters even see the application materials, so it really does make their job easier. Now, though there are many benefits to companies for using applicant tracking systems, there are also advantages to you as the applicant. If you're interested in more than one position at an employer, you do not have to complete multiple profiles. What you should do, however, is update your profile for each position you're applying to, particularly if you include different responsibilities. There are fewer restrictions. There is no limit on when you can apply with an online application. Paper applications require you to apply when the store is open. Online applications do not. You can apply at 3 a.m. or when you're in school. There's no limit on when the application can be submitted. Next, it reduces time and increases efficiency. With these being online, you can oftentimes copy and paste pieces of your resume and cover letter into these online profiles. Just be sure you clean up the formatting after you paste them into the company's system. Sometimes the formatting gets a little distorted when you copy and paste from Word into an online format, so you want to watch for that. Moving on, they also sometimes catch mistakes. Have you ever seen a paper application tell you that you've made a mistake on the application? I highly doubt it. If something is invalid or there is a mistake on an online application, some of them will tell you to fix it in order to move forward. They also sometimes tell you when you don't meet the minimum qualifications. A fifth benefit to you is that they are more convenient than paper-based applications. The thing about paper applications is that you'll need to have the proper gas and transportation every time you want to pick up and drop off an application. With online forms, you can just apply for the job at home. There's no getting out of your seat. You also don't have to dress up. You can sit at home and apply for jobs in your pajamas if you want. Now, like almost everything else, there are going to be a few challenges. Pertaining to online job applications, some of the most common challenges include profiles. You have to create a different profile for each employer you're applying to. These are often time-consuming and sometimes confusing, particularly since each online application looks different and asks different questions based upon the company's preferences. Along with that, you also have to remember usernames and passwords for each different profile. Now, it would be wise to choose a standard username and password to use. However, you want to be sure you change it after a while, or if you think someone might have your information, or you want to change it as well in order to protect your privacy. Another challenge with online applications is the pre-fill option that some of them offer. For instance, some will give you the option early on in the creation of the profile to upload your resume, and then they will fill in the rest of the profile using the information you have in your resume. It sounds convenient. However, it's actually a nuisance because many times when it pre-fills the profile from information from your resume, it often puts information in the wrong places or in the wrong order. I encourage you not to use the pre-fill options and to enter all of your information manually, as painful as that sounds. This gives you control of the information you enter for each question and reduces the chance for errors. Next, filling out a profile feels like you're creating your resume all over again. I understand that. Well, it practically is, unfortunately. In addition to filling out this online resume, they also ask you to upload your resume and cover letter. I know this is frustrating, but this is an opportunity for the employer to look for consistency or inconsistency for that matter. They want to see that the profile, the resume, and the cover letter all match up. And again, these profiles expedite the recruitment process and really makes their job a lot easier. Further, some online applications have the technical capability to identify when you have gaps in your employment. In some programs, if they notice you have a gap in employment, they might require you to explain them. And lastly, sometimes there are technical difficulties with the online application. Sometimes the online application is not working correctly due to something on the employer's end, such as a server being down or a broken link. Or sometimes the applicant might be having technical difficulties either because they're not comfortable with using a computer or maybe because their computer settings are out of date. I would encourage everyone to make sure they have the most recent version of their internet browser installed, and also to make sure your plugins, your Java, and your Flash players are updated to their most recent versions. Outdated computer settings can make the online job applications not work properly on your computer. So now that you understand some of the benefits and the challenges of online applications, let's focus on how to prepare to fill one out. First off, you need to have your resume and cover letter handy. This will help when you're filling out the profile. As stated earlier, you want to be sure your profile matches the information on your resume and cover letter, so having those right in front of you will help that process. Also, be sure you thoroughly understand the job you're applying to. Take the time to understand exactly what the company expects from applicants for the specific job. Do not ignore the detailed description of what the job entails. Also, research the employer. Go to their website and look up their mission and value statements. Also, be sure you look at all of the products and services they offer. You'll want to be able to align your profile, your resume, and your cover letter with the language they use in their company culture, which you can find on their website. This will also be good research when you're fortunate enough to get an interview. You'll also want to be sure you set aside enough time to complete the application. This is important because if you don't set enough time aside, you'll often try to rush filling out the application. This opens you up to the possibility of errors. Set aside enough time so that you can take your time filling out the online application. Now, while you're applying online, follow these steps. First, read and follow the directions carefully. This is important, particularly since each employer's online application is different. For instance, some job applications want you to list your education and training starting with your earliest experiences, whereas others want you to list your most recent ones first. There are other instances like this, so be sure you're always reading the directions so you know how they want the information displayed. Be thorough and specific, particularly when they ask you a question and you have to type a response. You want to be sure you answer the questions clearly, concisely, and thoroughly. Often, they'll have word limitations on how much you can type in a free-form text box. You'll want to be sure you're using the most powerful words to answer the question. Remember, recruiters only know as much or as little as you tell them. If they give you a limitation on how many words you're able to use to explain something, you want to be sure you're using the most powerful and convincing words as possible to convey your qualifications or experiences. Fill out all required fields within the application. What makes this easy is that oftentimes the online applications won't let you move forward with the application unless you fill out at least the required fields. It is important that you identify what fields are required and which are not. Often, the more fields you fill out, the better, whether they're required or not. By filling out every field, you're not just giving information that could make you stand out from the competition, but also you're demonstrating your interest and desire for the job. Many recruiters just skip over candidates who don't complete their applications fully. Next, you want to think about your answers before entering them. Again, you want to think about how the information you are entering is representing you, either positively or negatively. You'll also want to be sure you edit all of the answers for grammatical mistakes before moving to the next page. Go through everything you have typed into the form to make sure you have not misspelled anything, including your name, your email address, your mailing address, etc. Sometimes we just make mistakes, so it's always necessary to check over your work before moving on. And while filling out the form, always use action verbs and statements to market yourself. For instance, I managed a team of 5, or I developed a new process for filing customer files, etc. The use of action verb implies that you are actively engaged in improving your work environment. To add to that, you'll also want to use quantifiable evidence of your experiences. That just means you need to include some numbers. For instance, you could say, I created a training program for 10 new employees, or with the new documentation process I implemented for incoming customer calls, I improved our customer service ratings by 20%. You see the 20% of customer service ratings, the 10 new employees, those are quantifiable evidence to show how much you contributed to the employer. And lastly, never type into the free-form text box, "See resume." This comes across to the recruiter as being lazy and not wanting to enter the information. Yes, they could easily look at your resume and see the exact same information. I understand that. However, they are asking you to enter the information into this online application because, remember, this online profile you're creating is going directly into their applicant tracking system database in order to speed up and streamline the recruitment process. If you type "See resume," they're not going to look at your resume. It does nothing to help you and only hinders, if not completely eliminates, your chances of being considered for an interview. So to conclude this video, I'll leave you with a few final tips to remember about filling out online job applications. When asked to upload your resume and cover letter, consider uploading a PDF. You can easily convert a Word document to a PDF when you save the document. A PDF is often better because sometimes the formatting in Word documents will change on different computers. However, the formatting of a PDF will not change. That is why I encourage you to upload a PDF instead of a Word file. Along with that, sometimes the employer doesn't want you to upload your resume or cover letter at all, but instead wants you to copy and paste it into the online application form. Now, when you copy and paste your information, you have to remember to clean it up afterwards. When you copy and paste from a Word document into a little text box, all of the format changes most of the time. After you paste your information into the text box, go in and see how the formatting has changed and reformat it so that it looks nice inside that text box. This is important for everyone, but particularly if you have bullets that you've copied and pasted. Bullets don't really translate well from a Word document into those little text boxes, so cleaning it up is a necessity. Finding keywords. I've mentioned this before, but read the job description multiple times and pull out important words that you see they are using. You can also find industry-specific language by looking up the job on onetonline.org. Using keywords requires you to customize your resume and cover letter slightly to each specific job you apply to. As a note, if you're sending out the exact same resume and cover letter to multiple jobs, that will lessen your chances of hearing back from one or more of them. Next is the all-important salary question. Some job applications will ask this and others will not. Some will even require it. If it is not required, I would encourage you not to answer it. If it is required, look up the typical salary for the job you're applying to online by using onetonline.org. The key is you want to be realistic. Next, you'll also want to stay organized by creating some sort of tracking system, like a folder or an Excel spreadsheet that tracks what jobs you have applied to. This will keep you from applying for the same job twice, which is a big no-no. Also, you'll also want to keep the job descriptions for each job you apply to. That way, if they call you and want an interview, you'll have the job description at your fingertips. So, one, you remember what specific job you applied to, because sometimes we just forget. And two, so that you'll remember what the requirements and roles for that job were. On a personal note, every time I have ever applied for a job, I have first printed out the job description, or if I didn't have access to a printer, I've copied and pasted it into an email and emailed it to myself. That way, I always have the job description handy. Sometimes recruiters won't call for an interview for 2 or 3 or more weeks. By that time, you may have forgotten what the job was that you applied to. By having a printout handy or an email of the job description, you can quickly pull it out and refresh your memory if a recruiter calls you. Like the slide says, and it seems obvious, but don't apply for jobs you don't have the relevant work experiences or qualifications for. That is why it is so important to understand the job description prior to applying. If you apply to a job you're not qualified for, you're just wasting your time and the time of the recruiter. And lastly, proofreading is vitally important. Before hitting the submit button, take a final glance at the content you have provided. Keep in mind that once you hit that button, your information is sent to the recruiter directly. First impressions are important, so make the best one possible when you apply. As the slide says again, if it helps, have someone else check over your profile prior to submitting it. And now we're going to pause to practice. Now it is time for you to practice filling out an online job application. Pause this video and open your internet browser. Write the following URL down exactly as it appears and then type it into your internet browser's address bar. The URL is http://goo.gl/1 capital W 6 lowercase b capital A 4. Go through the form as if you're applying for a job. The simulation includes a mocked-up job description for you to use. Now refer back to this video at any time while you're filling out the application, and once you submit your answers, you are finished with the activity.